yeah, I was hoping for a distributor, obviously, but when we didn't, we were starting to get those passes. And we had been, I realized it wasn't going to be everybody's cup of tea. Got a lot of rejections. Had been rejected for Sundance that year. Showed it as almost a finished film. Like we could have been at Sundance July '90, but they rejected it. So I kind of had a chip on my shoulder then. I was like, fuck them. It's like, we're just going to do this on our own. And yeah, and then getting rejected by a smaller distributor. I just thought, well, back then your only goal is to throw it out there and hope something good happens. You're just fishing. Nothing changes in the film world. That's what filmmakers have always done.
And when Rick and the people with Detour Films, his group, approached me to play the film, not in a midnight slot, but in a featured slot, I was like, yeah, let's do it.
I mean, it's almost inseparable what we were doing at the Film Society, showing films at the Dobie, splitting the door, hustling up an audience, taking care of advertising. It was the same thing we had done for years as the Film Society, we were suddenly doing for Slacker. It was just, I remember talking to Scott, I was like, well, I have a film. He's like, you have a film? I was like, yeah, I made a film. I think we'll show. He's like, he's like, okay, I can give you one. We'll show it at 7:00 one night and just see how it goes. He was a little skeptical, and I don't know if he remembers that way, but I think one of my pitches was, hell, half Austin's in the movie. If everybody brings 3 friends, you're going to do it. Part of my pitch to him is like, there's so many people in the movie that I think if they all, I think it might get an audience. I've been hustling it up an audience for years for like experimental European weird films. So if we have an Austin film that's shot actually on the city block that the Dobie Theater is, like right there, it just might. I mean, I couldn't be too confident.
It had a handmade poster that they had Detour had put together, the people there at Detour. What it did have that a lot of films, or most of my films, didn't have, was it had Rick's group behind them promoting it, and I mean the grassroots, promotion.
This is pre-internet, so the people around the Austin Film Society was a grassroots organization, so its methods of marketing were very grassroots, and the way a lot of bands were promoting themselves at the time was through making these flyers.
We had done that for the Film Society. That's what kind of helped the Film Society be successful, is we treated it like a punk band. The week of the show, we'd put up flyers everywhere as if it was some punk show at the Dobie. It was a great guerrilla campaign. Everybody got into it. It was like, I really give all the credit to my my cohorts, Clark and Lee and Ann and, everybody who had worked on the film. I'm kind of reticent. I was like, and I remember Ann going like, we've really got something here. I was like, really? You think so? I was just kind of like, left on my own, I wouldn't have done anything. But suddenly there was like putting up murals and, we were just, it's like, okay, let's do this. Robert Rodriguez tells a story. He was at UT getting in an elevator and the elevator door shut. And there was we put these Slacker stickers everywhere. No one knew what it was. It's like, is it a band? Is it, it was a smart guerrilla ad campaign. It's like, what is Slacker? It's like people at that point didn't know, but then they found out. It was great.
Being a 2-screen theater, you had to be careful on what you couldn't make a whole lot of mistakes, on that. You can make a mistake on one film, on one screen, and the other screen will sort of, carry you through, and you can make some mistakes here and there, but you can't make a whole lot of them. So anyways, when Rick and I came through, what I said to them was, let's split a screen. Let's put you on like at 9 o'clock, and at 7 o'clock, I'll have something else.
But the irony was, of course, he wished he would have given us 3 slots, or, the 7, 9:30, and midnight. But that first week, he had to just kind of and that made it really elite. It was the restaurant the club you just couldn't get into for that first week. There was a huge demand and little supply.
And so what played opposite Slacker was, I think it's called The Brave Little Toaster. And interesting enough, it had been playing and it was hugely popular at the Adobe, which was really unusual to have an animated sort of kids, like we had kids coming into the theater and families, which just we never, it wasn't something we normally had. And then opposite Rick, so we had these two crowds mixing up. But that was the start of the Slacker run. The box office was phenomenal. It just was sellout. And this is before where people could buy tickets online or reserve your seat. So you had to come down to the theater, you had to buy your tickets. And for a theater owner, for me, we didn't really know how well a movie was going to do, except for if we had people come early to buy tickets. So if people were coming to buy a 7 o'clock ticket and they were coming and they were doing this like at 2 o'clock, then we're like, oh, there's some interest in this.
I think just by its very nature, there were so many people connected to the film who had either worked a day on it, cast members who were in it, people who'd come and gone, or just knew us from other, there was just a wide network. Hundreds of people, I think, felt personally invested in the film. So that's incredible because everybody knows somebody who knows somebody who, has some. So I think there was just a lot of goodwill and connectivity throughout Austin about the film.
So I saw the initial few weeks, kind of the regulars coming, the students and the people who would normally come to the Adobe. And then after, say, 4 weeks, I started to see a new crowd come, people that we didn't recognize, from the Adobe on that. And these were people where I think it sort of seeped into kind of a little bit of water cooler talk in that someone said, hey, I went to see the Slacker, or I went to try and see the Slacker and I couldn't get in. And that made it even more that people wanted to go where you was sold out and you couldn't get into it. And so it became, I felt, sort of the movie to see in Austin for a while. Because first of all, it was only playing at one theater and it was selling out. So coming to see it was really unique, and people, I think, wanted to see it more outside of that regular community because of the hype and because of the exclusivity.
The TV started covering it.
Even the movie poster reflects the attitude of the slacker. It's homemade and basically kind of thrown together. But the success and growth of this film since it first opened in Austin does not mirror the lifestyles of its stars.
I remember seeing one part where a guy says, I tried to see a movie tonight, but it was sold out. He was just talking about how it was sold out. He couldn't get in. It was a phenomenon.
Films such as that, like Slacker, that didn't have any sort of media push behind it or recognition, you had then the reviews in the press. This is where a lot of people got their information.
The press at the moment, we got a good review from the Chronicle, but more interestingly, we got a very thoughtful cover story by Chris Walters. Wrote a real think piece. That was one of the early, wow, he really had a lot to say about the movie, kind of from a socio-political, anthropological look. And I was like, oh, the movie has kicked in a smart person to, have an interesting analysis of it. So that was encouraging. I remember the local critics, the Chronicle was one thing, but the Statesman, I think we always felt they were sort of dragging their heels a little bit. I was a little nervous because, we were punks, so you kind of take on the mainstream critic, Patrick Taggart. I was like, okay, he'll hate this movie, talking about Slacker. I sent him a video like, oh, this movie's opening, but I expected him to really not get it at all. And he called me up. I'd never talked to him, and because we were all kind of, he sets a slow pace. He's kind of mainstream. He's a square, kind of that kind of thing. But he was so nice. He was like, I loved it. And he was like, oh, Taggart loves it? Wow. I remember feeling that our prospects were starting to be pretty limited, that we were going to be selling it we'll sell videos in the back of Film Threat magazine, and we'll show it, you know, maybe do a little tour of the cities, because we had connections just through the film site. Like, I bet we can show it in San Francisco. And we're starting to think of, again, talk about punk rock, you know, like a little bit of a tour with it. I was ready to spend the next year kind of maybe going around to screenings or trying to get a little theatrical run. Or it was narrowing, you know, the hope of it being, and never like that was a practical hope, but who doesn't like, oh, wouldn't it be great if some big distributor stepped in, or you got some sale and, you know, they could do all that stuff for you.
A writer for Film Comment, I think his name is Robert Horton, tracked Rick down and interviewed him about the film for a future issue of Film Comment. And all these things were important because they were sort of seeding, you know, the area, helping to create the moment for when Slacker would go beyond just playing in Austin and play for a national and eventually international audience. The Film Comment article also would become important because it was something Rick put in a package to send to producer's rep John Pearson. Again, John Pearson had represented all these films, She's Gotta Have It, Roger and Me, and he was a key point person based in New York at the time, to get to know if you were a filmmaker and if you had a low budget film that you wanted to go from, you know, screening at your local theater to maybe screening at theaters in other cities and towns. It was good to get to know him. Rick reached out to John Pearson with this package of the Film Comment article, I think some other articles from Time Magazine and the New York Times. And so John Pearson taught this film workshop in Maine in the summer. And his friend, Michael Barker, who was one of the people behind Orion Classics. Michael was coming up to the workshop and John showed him the video of Slacker.
Pearson, you know, leaks the tape to the Orion guys. They see it. They want to distribute the movie. It's kind of great to have it doing well, selling out every night. And it was right around that time too. I get that call from John Pearson saying, hey, call me back, something's going on. I was like, wow, everything changed in that one phone call, because now we had, you know, a national, just, you know, bigger distributor than I thought. We weren't on their radar. And here we have Orion Classics, you know, who distributes Eric Romer and Tarkovsky and, you know, all these kind of, and that's probably why they were interested in us. They had been under some criticism for being kind of a Eurocentric, arty-farty Euro thing, and they weren't really American indie. So I think Michael and Tom at Orion Classics were kind of, well, we'll show you American indie. We'll a street film, you know, it probably was a good street cred film for them to do, but it was a local thing. They both had deep Texas roots and knew that world. When I first talked to Michael Barker, he's like, any film that ends up on Mount Bonnell is okay with me. You know, it was funny. So, but it really empowered us to say, well, it wasn't a theoretical. It's like, no, a paying audience sees this movie every night. And so we don't have to sit here and theorize if people will like it or if it, you know, so it really put us in a great position.